Welcome. We're going to give it maybe just a minute. People are still clicking the Zoom link and jumping into the meeting here. So let's give it till 1 or 2 after the hour, but thanks for being here. Welcome. Got an exciting discussion, I think, lined up here. Really pumped to have this conversation with Dave Russell from Veeam. So appreciate you being here. There's Dave. Let's give it a couple more minutes before we start as people keep coming into the meeting. Dave, how you doing?
I am very good. How about yourself today, Dirk?
I'm doing good, man. Good to see you with your Veeam background behind you. That's pretty sweet.
You know, I gotta give you a rookie mistake confessional. I did a very late night, I think it was 11:30 my time last night, call with Asia Pacific,
Oh,
Japan, right?
man.
And for me, that's rough because I've over the years gone from night owl for like the majority of my life to early bird. And so now the idea of trying to not head bob, around 10 o'clock at night, knowing that I've got an hour and a half to go to wake up for the call. But the rookie or sort of like Zoom goof that I made is that I get confused sometimes, probably often at 11:30 at night, between the virtual backgrounds, it's Teams that actually inverts it.
Oh, no
And
kidding.
so you
It's
have to
backwards.
save as an invert, but I'm so used to operating in Teams. I'm like, okay, click Zoom, put on the virtual background. And, people are so polite and well, in so many places, but obviously in Asia Pacific, no one would ever say, you have something, right? Lettuce between your teeth and your flies open
Right.
and your shirt's not tucked in. They would never say that.
Right,
But after,
right. So
after the
nobody tells
fact,
you.
no one tells you, but after the fact, I got a couple of people that said, I thought your background was interesting, but I didn't know what Miav was. Like, oh, okay,
Shoot,
it was inverted. Darn it.
that's funny. Yeah. I didn't know that. Yeah, I didn't know that they flipped it on Teams.
So now I saved it because I had 2 of them, actually
Yep.
I have several of these, but everyone has a mirror. So now I don't call it mirror. Okay, Teams, this is the Teams
Teams and
version.
Zoom.
This is the Zoom version.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, good plan. Well, cool. We're a couple minutes after now. We got about 3 minutes after the hour here. So I'm excited about this conversation. I'm excited to be doing this with you, Dave. This is going to be a great, I think, discussion. And so I'm going to actually, instead of presenting the full screen, I'm going to present like this. And so I feel like it's just a little bit better for everybody. So we'll just quick do intros and then we'll tell you about the event. It's a little bit of a different flavor of event if you have not been to one of these before. So my name is Dirk Arends. I'm the president at Virtual Systems and we're a cloud service provider. We're a big partner with Veeam, so one of the biggest in the Midwest, and just means we do a lot of Veeam, love this relationship that we've got with Veeam, but we help businesses just solve some of the cloud problems that they're having, and how do we get to the cloud? How do we use a multi-cloud? We're a big VMware partner as well, big Microsoft partner, so one of the biggest, we're actually at that top tier of VMware partnership, and just trying to help customers solve problems with cloud stuff. So I have the distinct honor of getting to do this with Dave Russell, a legend in the industry today. So I'll let him intro himself, but just really appreciate the seasoning that you've got in the industry here and the leadership role that you've taken over the last several decades for Gartner and for Veeam. So excited to do this with you today.
No, I'm thrilled to be here with you, Dirk, and this is going to be a lot of fun. Don't pay attention to any of the text. Who knows what it says? It probably distills down to Dave didn't know what he wanted to do when he grew up. So for the last 32 years, he did backup. And my wife actually was in backup and recovery, meaning getting paid for it when I was in grad school, doing mainframe development at IBM. And then she got me into that role. So we have fascinating dinner time conversations, Dirk, but I am so thrilled to go and unpack this. I know you've got a slide coming about just how unique this research is, but it's probably said at every webinar, this is going to be different because we have literally just industry leading research, the likes of which no one's ever seen, and it's really fresh.
Yeah, I mean, just dropped. So biggest, I mean, what is it, Dave? The biggest study in the industry, and it just came
Yeah,
out last week.
that is right.
So
This is the biggest research study ever done in the backup industry field. We have a number of 3,000 people across 28 countries. And yeah, it's not even a week, or maybe it's a week old today.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I mean, super exciting. So this will be fun. Let me tell you about how this event works. First of all, it's being recorded. So, I mean, you're not on camera, but the whole event is. So you will get a link to this after the event. And it's a little bit of a different flavor. So we want to present some material. So we're going to talk about this stuff. I normally at this point, I say, you know, whoever I'm co-hosting with, you know, which would be Dave in this case. Dave and I are not the smartest people in the room, although I can say that about me, but I don't know if I can say that about Dave in this case. There's a lot of smart people in this virtual room together. And it's so hard in IT to sometimes just get up out of our seat and problem solve with other people. So Virtual Systems started doing these events a number of months ago, probably, I don't know, maybe close to a year ago. And we thought, how do we get a bunch of smart people in a room together and learn about a topic together, but also give us the ability to ask questions of each other, of the presenters. And, you know, in that spirit of not being the smartest people in the room, how do we get other people to dialogue with each other during the event? And so we incentivize that. So there's a Q&A. You can see it in your Zoom, what do you call that, like dashboard thing. So click on that. And if you ask some questions during the event, there are some people who are panelists on the event here who you're not going to see, but they are going to answer some questions. Ask some good questions while we're here. Start to engage this material and dialogue with it. It's not, you know, we don't learn best when we just sit and listen the whole time. Usually we learn best when we're experiencing the material and when we're engaging it. And so that's what we want to incentivize. If you see somebody ask a good question and you know the answer to it, write down the answer to it. If you see somebody ask a good question and you second the motion, go ahead and upvote it. And if we see that dialogue, there are other people on the event today who are going to get your name onto a wheel. And a couple times we're going to take a break, actually one at the middle and one at the end. And if you are engaging the material and asking some questions or answering some questions, your name's going to go on the wheel and you're going to get, hopefully, a chance at a good prize. So we're giving away some cash prizes, $100 Amazon gift cards, $250 Amazon gift cards, $500 Amazon gift cards, you know, kind of in recognition of being here. If you don't feel comfortable receiving the gift, you can donate it. We've got some donation partners. And so in the follow-up campaign, we will send you a note and just say, hey, thanks for the question. Here's your gift. You can say, hey, I'd rather donate this. So feel free to do that. But it's our way to try to, you know, get some dialogue, inject some dialogue into our experience of problem solving together, because it is just hard sometimes to, I mean, I got kids right now who are in high school and they're doing standardized testing. And so that's like you alone with the Scantron test, you know, like it's not necessarily a real life reflection of how we always solve problems, but it is a good way to figure out if we can answer standardized test questions. But in real world, like we're solving these problems together. So this is hopefully a venue where you and I and everybody else in this room can ask each other some questions and just engage each other and hopefully learn some stuff. So you'll get some follow-ups from this. So you'll get the video. You will actually get the Q&A. So if you see somebody ask a good question, you get that transcript and it's got people's names on it. So if you don't feel comfortable letting your name be on a Q&A and winning a prize, that's okay. But we want to give you the ability to connect with other people outside of this event. Keep the dialogue going. You see somebody sharp in this event and they answer some questions for you, like engage them on social media, keep a relationship going. So that's the goal with events like this. So I hope it works. It has been working in the past. We usually get really good registration and attendance on these things, and people all over North America who are pretty good at keeping this dialogue going. And it's usually the most fun part of this event is kind of seeing what everybody's talking about in the Q&A. So, all right. So with that said, let's jump into some of this research, Dave. Let's talk about it. So here we go. You want to kick us off?
Yeah, so this kind of alluded to it, but so I was a former industry analyst, 13-ish years. My colleague now at Veeam, Jason Buffington, industry analyst at Enterprise Strategy Group or ESG for a number of years. And we actually got the funding from Veeam. Actually, believe it or not, I don't know if I told you this, Dirk, but just completed, which includes this, and already in flight, Veeam will have 4 of the 5 industry's ever largest surveys in the
Oh,
backup
wow.
and recovery space. And what we're doing is not asking on behalf of Veeam. We're hiring various third parties to go blindly, not representing any vendor or anything like that, asking a number of questions. But this is up to 3,000 professionals, 28 countries. It just completed end of January. In many cases, we have year-over-year responses. So this is pretty fresh. And what I always tell people, Derek, even if you look at the results and say, well, I'm not exactly like that, you can still utilize this to go talk to your peers or your boss, your network, and say, hey, these are the challenges that the rest of the world is facing. Here's what we've done to mitigate that, or here's what I think we can do to mitigate something that we are experiencing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good stuff.
This one's interesting to me. Not surprising that economic uncertainty rose to the top of the list given everything going on in the last year, roughly. But I like to look a little bit further down in this case. If I really look at it, changing customer needs is pretty even, although obviously it's shifted a little. That skill shortages, every time I see the word skills, I get a little like spidey sense tingle because I feel like for decades, Dirk, skills have always been a problem, and it's a problem that's not getting solved. And then you see other things, you have to go down a little ways. Cyber threats, I don't think anyone would say they're less concerned about cyber threats. I think what we see here is that so many other things rose to the top in terms of my belief I'm going to
Yep.
experience in them every day potentially.
Yep. Yep. I mean, I think we're seeing a lot of this. That's a good point. I mean, the context of the study is 2021 or 2020,
Yep.
really kind of coming out of the pandemic. And so pre-pandemic, it almost feels like a world ago where
Yeah.
pre-pandemic, we were kind of thinking about everything that we're normally thinking about. And now there's this new piece of context that's been injected into our world and how that affects us, especially when we think about protecting our data, and our strategy around that has really changed a lot. So this was interesting too. I think to your point, I think things like cyber threats were so much closer to the top or front of mind. As we're having these conversations with clients, that was easily the most commonly talked about thing. When we're coming in and saying, "Hey, what challenges are you guys facing?" It was all around, well, how do we protect ourselves against these threats? How do we recover from these threats when and if they do come in? And now, I think there's a lot more depth to that. I think I would say, to your point, maybe there's some nuance that kind of bubbled up there in the surveys. But
This is believe it or not, we're hitting you with some of the great stuff early on. If you're a band, you never want to play the hits in the beginning. You want to come out for the encore. But Dirk and I said, let's hit the gas pedal early on. A lot of stuff here, but let's decompose it for you. This is, I call it the money slide. This is the question, which you can see kind of in the middle there. Which of the following of these things that are listed would drive you to change your primary backup solution from something you have today to something new? And so if you checked, you could check all that bother you in the gray, and in the purple, which is a stack ranked by, is what's the one thing that would make you, say out with the old, in with the new. And Dirk, for 2 years in a row, the number one thing that would make people switch their enterprise backup solutions was to improve the backup reliability or success rate. And that's just concerning on so many levels. Not enough time to probably unpack all the nuances of why that should be worrisome to people. But it's a lot like saying, why would you switch automobiles? And Dirk responds, well, I want a car that reliably starts, that can do what I initially purchased it and, intended it for. And there's an old joke in the backup industry. It's hard to recover that which you have not successfully backed up. So not being able to properly capture the data, I think we're going to see that come up again a little bit later in this report. Certainly always concerns on things like cost, and that's manifested in a few different ways here. People wanting less complex solutions, people wanting to flex into the cloud as well, Dirk.
Yeah, I think this is, I mean, I'm going to keep on your car analogy here. It's like, this is what we see on the ground floor. I can't tell you how often we have this conversation with customers who say, hey, we've got whatever piece of software. It can be a backup and DR piece of software. It can be, we've implemented VMware VDI. It can be, we've implemented this piece of security software, and they've gotten, I don't know, 10, 20% through the initial implementation, and then it's paused. Then it's not, continuing on. And so to your point, what they have is something that's not fully functional. And I will say, I mean, we consult with a lot of customers who have Veeam, and the rhetoric is some version of, oh, we've got it, we implemented it, it's not great, or I inherited it, and so I never really got to, fully deploy it. And so it's that, I think it's that work of, all right, let's take the time to fully roll this out and deploy it and get to know it and tweak it so that it is serving the business purposes that we need it to serve. Because I don't know, it does feel kind of weird that we're still talking about the reliability of backups now.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't be, like that should be like brass tacks. I feel like it should be boilerplate stuff. We're taking care of that. But I think that there's so many things going on in IT. The tendency is like, all right, I got it. I'm like sort of implemented, but yeah, now we'll just move on to the next thing. Do you think that's some of what's happening in this data?
Yeah, I think it very well could be. Speaking of the boring conversations my wife and I likely have on the patio, we do chat about this from now. And then when we get these results, and as someone that's not steeped in the industry, she'll say that doesn't seem different than 5 years ago or 7 years ago in some regards. And I think what's happening is that the environments we're being asked to protect are getting more complex. Now, some of us are lucky enough we get to actually say out with the old and we go to the new. But many of us, it's kind of like we have 1 foot over on one side of the river or stream, and then another foot over there too. We have to support legacy. We have to support the new. Now we kind of almost have the new, where we might be doing things born in the cloud, containerized services, etc. So I think it's not because we don't take it seriously. I think it's not because we're not trying to apply more
Yeah.
rigor to it. I think it's just the expectations, service level agreements and service level objectives have increased. We'll see soon in the report, I believe that more and more data is considered critical, environments more complex, so it's not an easy thing.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think it is. It's pretty complex. So
Shout out to
from
everyone else, by the way. I'm like having a hard time keeping up with everybody between Q&A and chat. I love it.
I wondered, so Amanda's question was good. Are there any skills in particular you recommend focusing on to help the stat? And I didn't know if her question was specifically about this stat of improving the reliability of backups, or if she was back here. We believe, yeah, I think it's probably, maybe my guess would be around here. And I would say, I mean, it is maybe some training, maybe like one thing I feel like Veeam does really well, at least for us as a service provider, and I know for clients, is just providing that kind of ongoing education stuff. How do we get, how do we get our employees connected to the technical details that they need to be connected to create the right business outcomes? So there's that piece, but there's also maybe just using, like what we're doing today is we look around the room and we go, I don't know, I'm trying to solve this business problem. What are you guys doing? And I hope, as a cloud service provider, we have that relationship with our clients. I hope that relationship continues to mature in that way. That's the value the free value really that I hope we bring to the table for them, is the ability to go look at some of their technical sales manager people and go, what do you think about this thing? Like, I don't know how to do this thing. What is your opinion? And part of our role is we network them into Veeam maybe, and some of Veeam employees. And so maybe it's a combination of those things. I don't know if Dave, you have any insight into that either, but.
Yeah, I think it is a combination of things. And I think the answer always comes back to it depends. And I think that what does it depend on? It depends on what are your primary objectives? How fast do you need to potentially make a change? I think learning skills and importing fresh skills, new skills, and then just revisiting whatever the problem may be are all great things to consider.
Yeah, good stuff. This is the takeaway slide, so the summary slide, but go ahead on it, Dave.
Yeah, if we could distill it down. So we were chatting the other day or maybe other week, Dirk and I, and saying about a dozen years ago, I actually started doing a great deal of research about why people actually switch backup products, and found that the top 3 reasons year after year after year remain the same. Some version, meaning you could switch them around 1, 2, or 3 ordering, but around cost, capability, and complexity. And here we are now 13 years later. And what we saw from these individual respondents here and the results is that it indeed is those 3. And if you could add a 4th, it would be cloud or wanting to exploit the cloud. And I, on chat, just typed back in because I think it was Matt had a question about cloud and Veeam. And cloud is a very broad term, like someone answered or asked a question I answered about edge, also very broad. But I think being able to exploit that in all of its many ways are what people are really looking for.
Yeah, and I think it's worth making the distinction that cloud is 2 things, really. It is another place for your compute and your data. That's a piece of cloud. And so when we talk about cloud strategy, often we are talking about kind of that. It can be some version of like, what's our edge data center strategy, or how are we using hyperscalers like Google Cloud and AWS, but it is also an operational model. And I think that's an important nuance that comes into some of this data too. When we talk about cloud strategy and digital transformation strategy, it's that operational move to OpEx spending, OpEx consumption, and really the efficiencies that we get when we can do that in an operations model. And so I think that's some of what the data means here. When I peeled back some of this research too, Dave, was getting into like, I don't know that it's just off-prem data that we're really after. I think it's really the operational efficiencies that we get from cloud. So.
Yep. Yeah, and that really pops here, because when we ask people, if you hear the word modern or innovative around data management, data protection, what is that? What does that look like? And wow, interesting results. Number 1 that percolates, and this is the same notion. You could check every box, that'd be gray. What's the top thing? That'd be purple. And that's how we organize this. But automation, orchestration rises to the top. Disaster recovery capabilities percolate to the top. Being able to integrate with other capabilities, being able to, meaning like security, being able to flex into the cloud. So if I could say one thing, I'll hand it over to you, Dirk, is that I want a modern solution to be something that doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? Something that truly can help me, but can also participate in the rest of the ecosystem.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. And I almost feel like it's become trendy to overuse some of those words like modern and innovative with regard to the solution. But well, I think to your point, what we really mean is something that is integrated well into the solution, and that, almost operationally, I can grab experts who are at my disposal to help me, solve the business outcomes with that piece of software. I think that some of what's inside that term modern, it's doing lots of things for my organization, but I've got the ability to, reach into my community of people and still use that software to, continue to solve whatever I need it to solve for. And Veeam does a great job, being, I think, at the forefront of some of that problem-solving discussion in IT too. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the goal. Yeah, so, interesting here, DRaaS, and we're going to see that as a service and wanting help and being able to, get solutions that might be a little bit more modern, might also come with providers that can really help you jumpstart your capabilities. That rises to the top.
Yeah, good call. Kristen, how you doing? You want to spin a wheel?
Let's do it. I'm excited.
All
Drum
right.
roll, please.
So Kristen is the one who is getting all the names onto the prize wheel, and she's going to share the screen while we do it. And if you've been asking the questions, hopefully your name gets on there. We'll do a couple spins now. And
Dirk,
then we'll move through some more material.
can't-
Yeah, go ahead.
I can't share my screen. Do you mind changing that for me really quickly?
Oh yeah, let me see how I do that. Okay, that should be better.
All right. Here we go.
That's a lot of questions already. Okay, first one, $100. Going to Brian. Thanks for being here, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
All right.
So reminder, you'll get an email from us. Everybody will after the event, but if you do win something, you'll get a specific email that will say, hey, here's a prize. And
Spin number 2. Stephanie.
Stephanie, congratulations. Thanks for being here.
All right. One more.
What did we say on that one? Yep. So this is a $250 gift card. $100, $100, and $250 going to, come on, Jeff Leibel. Charlie. Congrats, Charlie. Thanks for asking a good question. I don't know what it was, but I'm sure it was good.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so I got to take that screen share back somehow. Give me just a second and I will do that. There it is. And here we go. Okay, the next ones are bigger at the end. We've got a couple more 250s and then a 500. So, but thanks again for, I just want to say, appreciate, I know it's hard to take an hour sometimes, be part of a live event. I hope that you gain some value besides just the possibility of winning some prizes, but let's keep going. So digital transformation, this is good. I like, this is really fun, high level conversation, but go ahead with some of this.
Yeah, you know, the net takeaway is, you know, if as a former software tester back, that's how I kind of first got into backup. And you know, you look at the boundary conditions, the low end of the spectrum, only 99% are saying, I'm sorry, only 1% out of 99% are saying that they've reduced their cloud consumption in some manner. The other 99% are somewhere else on the spectrum. So 8% saying no change. If we go counterclockwise, you know, 20 slightly increased, roughly 20 to 19, roughly 40 said moderately increased, and approximately 30 said significantly increased. But boy, this is one of the few times you ask a question and get really contrasting or amazing results. At just 99% to say, you know, no, this didn't affect us. And from an increase perspective, to see, you know, what we did here at actually 91% is phenomenal. You don't see that typically.
Yeah, we asked this question in the LinkedIn survey. So we had a lot of people register on LinkedIn for the event, and there was some dialogue about it. And so if you did answer this question right, in the follow-up campaign, shoot a note back to whoever you get an email from and just say, hey, I answered this question right. I think it's only a couple people though, when I looked at it. So, because it was shocking. I think that when we asked the question, we gave the options, it was a multiple choice. So you could pick 61%, 71%, 81 or 91. And it does feel super high because this was in the first few months of the pandemic, really. So to see that kind of move and leverage of the cloud in that first time period was, I think, incredible. But it's sort of not surprising that people are doing it. It's just, I think, the volume that was surprising for me. But
yeah, and we hit it right there. That's just when you see that kind of numbers, 91% and 1%, that says it all, really puts it in perspective.
Yep.
So this one looks busy, but if we think about, you know, kind of break it down a little bit, what you really see is very few actually said that the pandemic fully halted for the short term their digital transformation initiatives. And in the, basically, let's call it 8 o'clock going reverse to midnight, what you really see is a vast majority of organizations said, we're going to go harder, faster. What we've seen is that there's a little bit of a digital divide, a have not. The organizations that basically said, I'm just going to try to wait this out, not do anything, maybe it'll go past me quickly. They seem to be exhibiting more challenging recovery behaviors from a financial perspective and in terms of what they've actually gotten implemented. The flip side is there are organizations that said, no, we've actually sped up. No, we've actually gone further, faster with different kinds of customer contact, even internal contact capabilities. So I sometimes refer to this, Dirk, as the kind of the digital have and have nots.
Yeah, this is really interesting. I got a buddy up in Canada who's doing a dissertation on trying to quantify what digital transformation really means and standardize it across businesses, because it's hard. When I use that term, I don't know if you are thinking of it in the same way I am, but I think, I mean, to your point, I think it is really interesting just thinking about how the pandemic has, for the most part, I mean, it's had an effect, whether it's moved them to slow down or to speed up. It's certainly presented some new challenges in that journey for people. Here's the summary on it.
Yeah. So, a little more than half. That's why I say have and have nots. Less than a third slowed down, roughly 20% kind of in the middle, but a little over half sped up. And I think we're going to see more people going harder now in this as we get into 2021.
I feel almost like it's been a pause, like it has said, for some folks, it's given this, I wouldn't even call it a reprieve, but it's like this moment where we've said, all right, we got to evaluate what our strategy is here, because we didn't know this was a possibility now, this like, and that one of the main challenges I think that the pandemic brought was, how do we empower our employees or empower our business to be anywhere and do everything we need to do securely and I guess in compliance in a lot of ways too. But I mean, it's a big problem to solve.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
So here we go.
Yeah.
One,
if we look at this one, this is interesting. So overall, it basically says we're in a continuum here, meaning roughly a little over a quarter say we're pretty mature. That's how they self-assess their digital transformation capabilities. Roughly half say we're in process. Only 2% they're not started. So using that kind of other end of the spectrum logic, 98% are somewhere from getting ready to do it to think they've done it. So what I basically tell a lot of organizations is, even if you're, backup Joe or backup Jane, there is someone in your organization that's very focused on probably multiple different digital transformation activities, and you have a role to play in being able to support that.
Yeah. I want to quick answer this question that Jeff asked, and that is what businesses we are asking this question of. The size is really, I think, in the enterprise space, Dave. I feel like it's one of the earlier slides where we mention it. Here it is. So
yeah, it is overweighted towards,
more.
Yep, it is overweighted towards enterprise. Of course, there could be different views of enterprise, but with that, we use the definition of 1,000 or more employees.
Yeah. I think it's also on this slide interesting to think about, again, like there's not a standard definition that we give to digital transformation. And so when one person calls it mature, another person might call it in process or just starting. It's hard to quantify some of that.
Yeah, and you have to appreciate that it's a bit of a self-assessment. So that 28% that said we're fully there, that should be taken somewhat with a grain of salt. However, it's a barometric reading about where approximately does everyone pan out.
Yep.
And here's
most of us would say we're somewhere on that journey.
We're somewhere on that journey, and I think this slide says everyone's on the journey.
Yeah. Yep.
So I want to skip the obvious and go to the middle of this one, our old friend skills at the third highest there. And I just, it's typical to expect resources to be a problem. I mean, if you look lower, yeah, we don't have time, we don't have money. Yeah, we need more, people to within the company to support or champion this. But skills, and then the one above it, dependency on legacy systems and technology, or I would also call this Dirk technical debt. Those are the areas where technology can probably help. I mean, yeah, understanding that right now, from a very unique time and literally human history, that the pandemic kind of percolated up. Let's take that as a bit of an edge case and just go straight to number 2 and 3. That's where I think Veeam, frankly, and yourselves can help address these challenges.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a big, like I said at the beginning, I mean, so many times we're having this conversation with customers, and I could interject probably, any fake name of a customer and tell you the same story that we hear probably, I'd say a handful of times every week, and that is some version of, we've got the tool, and it is probably a little bit more that time and expertise question of, and maybe even more time than anything, although that's not what's showing up on the research here. But I mean, that's the one that I think we hear the most is, we've got the tool in place, we're just not prioritizing getting it rolled out. So I mean, it's a challenge. I think it's a big challenge, but one of the ways you can solve it is by leveraging your network of people around you to,
Yes.
How do we just ask some questions, bring up the dialogue and start using your resources. Jeff, whose question I just answered, is spearheading a project with T-Mobile to bring these, I think high-level PhD type experts into the industry to be consultants. And I think, that effort of, just for any business, no matter who you are, finding those people in your network who can help you. Those are, candidly, this is a sales pitch a little, that's the virtual systems of the world. Veeam also has terrific resources. There's a lot of consultants out there who are in your network of people who, you're doing more with less, people in your own IT staff. So leverage those consultants to start, answering some questions, or, hopefully you can get some value out of being on an event like this and throwing some stuff into Q&A and go, how do I do this thing? And somebody says, this is how you do it. It's so easy. Here's a YouTube video or whatever. So yeah, good call. Good point out, Dave. So.
Yeah. And, here, I think what we see basically is that people are responding back with they're really going to look for more cloud, right? I've had high level people say phrases like, I don't want to be in the real estate business, meaning, have brick and mortar and HVAC and all of that goes with it. So I think what we've seen is the pandemic has probably pushed or escalated certain things forward, and this is one of them. I don't think we'll see people reducing, and that, only 4% saying we do not see any major changes in our delivery model. That's pretty telling.
Yeah, and I think this is another good spot to point out, like that difference between when we talk about cloud as a location for data and compute, that's different than when we talk about cloud as an operational model. Marcus, I'm seeing your question. I mean, I think that's a good question. His is, what insight can you provide about SMBs with the same challenge? I think it's a little more around, how do we take advantage of the operational efficiencies of cloud? Like the rhetoric or the dialogue that we have in the SMB space with clients is, we don't care. Like if I'm an SMB owner, I don't care where my data is. I want to see, really, I just want my infrastructure to be always on. I want to know when I get hit by ransomware, because it's typically not if anymore, it's really when I get hit by something, how resilient am I? I just need you to tell me it's like very good. Like I can call you and then it's done. That's the cloud strategy conversation. And it's a little less about, again, like, is my data is it in Amazon? Do we have stuff up in S3? Can I get it fast? Nobody cares. It's really the business outcome that produces that, that I think drives the conversation. And that's where I think a lot of SMBs are asking that question too. Yeah, good stuff. I'm gonna hit the summary on this. So
Yeah.
Yeah, 6 out of 10, I mean, are saying, hey, we're going to add some more cloud services. It's become more and more, you can consume software as a service, and that's your cloud thing. And so many people are saying, hey, we've got a cloud strategy that's in our software providers. Microsoft, did Office 365, so we have a cloud strategy. but then it's other clouds. So how do we get this cloud? Because we've got this legacy application, to Dave's point about, solving problems on those legacy applications. How do we get this cloud to talk to that cloud? And that's become, I think, some of the barrier in SMBs, but also enterprise fully taking advantage of cloud too. So anything more to add, Dave, as we summarize this one?
No, I think you nailed it.
Okay, infrastructure trends was also pretty interesting, I thought.
Yeah, this one we can probably zoom through. However, I will just sort of decompose it because I would imagine people look at this and go, gosh, lots of bars. So if we look at the left-hand one, the physical servers, the way to think about this is last year, 2020, is what people said we're doing today. That's in purple on the left-hand side. Then in 2020, that purple timeframe, we said, what do you think it's going to be 2 years from now? That's second from the right in that kind of light green avocado-ish color. Then we did the same thing this year, 2021, in kind of that gray. We said, what are you doing right now, Dirk? And then we did the same thing. Hey, Dirk, 24 months from now, what are you going to do? That's the rightmost at the kind of darker gray. So not surprisingly, on that left part, physical servers on the decline. However, they said 2 years from now, we want to go from 38 to 29%. In 1 year, they got slightly below 29%, and they plan to go with even more reduction. Interestingly enough, VMs weren't anticipated to be affected in a multi-year period, meaning that 30% to 30%. However, it did go down and is expected to stay about the same. The big change has been on the right there, that hosted machines are on the rise, meaning hosted VMs within a cloud service provider. People basically overachieved. Last year, they said we're at 32% or roughly a third today. 2 years from now, we want to go to 41%. Well, arguably, likely due to global events. In 1 year, they went not from 32 to 41, but 32 to 47%, and now anticipate to go even significantly higher than that.
Mm-hmm.
This to me is very telling. The money part of this is on that lower right-hand side that says, boy, the shift is on.
Yeah, yep. Which I don't think is a huge surprise for folks, but I think it always is, I don't know, it's compelling to see it visually.
Yeah, I agree. And I always, back when I was an industry analyst, got to speak with lots of intelligent people, but part of my assistance was trying to give them the ammunition to go say, look, it's not just my opinion. This is happening, from according to the largest, industry research ever conducted.
Mm-hmm.
So this one's interesting to me. Veeam is pure software. And what this is saying is basically half are saying due to the pandemic, not only do we maybe not want to be in the brick and mortar business, but we don't want to be acquiring and racking and stacking additional hardware. 49% say we want to reduce our hardware.
Yeah, and I think this goes to, I'm going to guess on some of this and guess that some of that reason behind that is that there's a perception that cloud services are more highly available, or at least the owner of the business or the business unit itself, IT within the business, doesn't have to think about creating that highly available environment. They don't have to own that function of it. They can just push a couple buttons, pay the right price, and now that, highly available function, at least coming out of the pandemic, that some of our perception is we're solving some problems with clients. The dialogue is about, all right, how do we make sure it's available to everybody and it's always available and it's always recoverable? But I think this is an interesting one too. We've got some momentum here. There's some good questions that I want to answer, but
I know there really are.
Let's keep going. I'm going to jump in on this. This is hopefully we give you a chance to learn something, or to learn something that you didn't know here. But on this topic of businesses who say we want to reduce our on-prem footprint, we're having more and more of that conversation around cloud storage in particular. And so this is a cool technology and a newer partnership for virtual systems that I think is interesting and I wanted to bring up here. And that's this idea of basically what we call a virtual private storage array. But it gives a customer the ability to take cloud storage, bolt it onto their own environment, and use it for whatever they need it for, and even change the way they use it on the fly. So it's really that kind of network attached storage idea. So Cloud NAS, where we are, if you've got file storage need, if you've got an object storage need, even block storage need, you can bolt this cloud storage on it rather than consume it as a big on-prem array where you've got to go sit it down in your data center. You got to buy another one for redundancy. Now you've got to manage it, making sure it's powered and it's got the right cooling and all of that. Now you can just push the right execution button, and it is whatever kind of storage you need at whatever time you need it, and you only pay for it as you go. So really cool technologies that I think continue to emerge as part of, and I think maybe emerge faster than they would have, without an event like the pandemic. But, I think really neat technologies that are, continue to be on the leading edge of what cloud solutions are providing for customers. And that is more that operational view of cloud and how do we just consume the infrastructure we need at the time we need it, make sure it's available, that kind of thing. So, this idea of Cloud NAS can happen on your, in your building. It can happen with a, provider like us. It can happen public cloud adjacent, hyperscaler adjacent, so it's pretty powerful stuff. And I think, the conversation again that we keep having with clients is how do I leverage some of this technology to make a difference, for our business outcomes? And I don't want to have to buy way more storage than I'm going to need over the next 5 years. I just want to consume it. That whole subscription thing. I just want someone to deliver it when I need it. So takeaways.
Yeah, I think half are saying we're going to reduce hardware. 20% roughly are in the same boat, and a little less than a third are going to increase. But that I'm really curious to run the same result next year, meaning is that 30%, not that we're still doing business as normal, but it's that we limped along 2020, right? We pushed out expense and now we're starving. We can't wait anymore. We the technology refresh or roll went out 8 months and now we have to buy, but 2022, we're not going to buy.
Yeah. Good. That's a good call. I think so. I'm trying to read the Q&A as we're going here. And Ted, I appreciate your comment in here too, around the reasons for people reducing that on-prem footprint. Some of the benefits aren't there anymore. When you've got a business with employees everywhere, there's no longer the same IT benefits that were there when everybody came into the same office every day for the same, amount of time and sat in the same physical space. So that's a good insight. I didn't think to add that, but I appreciate that. Okay, there's some backup metrics. We got about 10 minutes left. Then we'll spin the wheel one more time, 3 more times actually, for some bigger prizes. But any questions that you see, Dave, before we get into some of these backup trends that you want to address live?
Yeah, there's one I answered, and if I find it, I think it's from Brian. It was actually, in a weird way, my favorite question so far, which, Brian said, with all these different things that affect cybersecurity, ransomware, what would you tell people? And what I typed in there, I thought that was a good question because it wasn't just about, like what can a backup tool do, or it's not a feature function, check a box. And so what I did is I quoted Veeam's head of support's SWAT team for cyber threats. And every single day, unfortunately, multiple times a day, with 400,000 customers in 184 countries, somebody's coming in every single day saying we've been hit. And the head of our team that runs that, when asked, what's the number one thing you would do to tell the organizations, not just, backup Joe or Jane, what would you tell the organizations? He says, I would scare them. I would tell them to think about things like the Sony hack, things like Merck, and understand it's not just a possibility, it is a reality. You may not be you may not be a Fortune 500 company, but that dark scenario can happen because I answer that call every single day. That was his response.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I feel like I will say we, in our spot, Virtual Systems serves a lot of clients who are in different parts of this digital transformation journey. Some of them, let's just call it broadly that. Some of them are using backup in DR and they've got it, like we talked about, kind of plugged in and it's doing okay. And but mostly their strategy is kind of a cross your fingers strategy. Then there's others who are testing this every week, because their perspective, we have a CISO here, Mitch, who's terrific. One of the most paranoid guys I know, assumes everything's going to go wrong, and it's terrific because it will at some point probably go wrong. And when it does, we're prepared for it because we've ran that practice scenario enough times that it's regular, it's commonplace for us. And I think it's a good note. I think he answered that question well, Dave. Like,
I do too. I think that's,
you be in that headspace where it's going to go wrong. Think worst case scenario, and then let's just practice it. And I think that's some of the value that, shamelessly, I'm going to plug us again, and I'm sorry for that, but that we can bring to the table with an organization is, let's practice it together. It's a part of the solution. It doesn't cost you extra. Let's just run through the motions together. Or you run through the motions and call us if you run stuck on something. So, but I think that's the method.
absolutely. Cool. Well, if we get into the
go
algebra
ahead.
section here really quickly, I can rifle through some of these stats, which look a little daunting. But I always refer to this as the algebra section because the end slide, which we see there, kind of slide 34, kind of puts it together. So we saw earlier that people say the number one reason they'd switch backups is to improve backup success. So here is a backup success question. So in the middle, past year, approximately what percentage of your backup jobs completed without errors? And number two, did not exceed their time frame. So Dirk, to be successful, we're saying, hey, it has to work. Recovery was complete, but also it has to work in the time frame. Like if you get it back in a week and your expectation was it's actually going to be less than an hour, then they'll go. So 63% overall say, yes, we were able to achieve this. You can see the distribution curve here, but conversely, what that means is 37%, over a third, have backups that are not successful within their window. And I alluded to it, but there's a bad joke. It's hard to recover that which you haven't successfully backed up. Then you go to the next slide. Let's ask the opposite. Hey, backup worked and it worked in the time frame, but from a restore perspective, was it successful? So it completed, and same rules, it completed in the expected amount of time. So 66 or exactly 2/3 globally, that was the case. And you can see the distributions here. But conversely, that means exactly a third said no. When I went to go recover something that I backed up properly, it was not able to come back, or at least in that time frame. So here's where it gets to be, a little tricky. Let's switch gears ever so slightly. Let's look at the servers. We ask people now, are you having unplanned downtime when you had to take a server down, or even if it had to reboot within the last year? And you can see the distribution here. Now I will fall on the sword, and I'll tell you, Dirk, and everyone else, that big bar you see, which is a band of 26% to half or 50%, we had no idea that so many people were going to vote for that. So we didn't do this sort of narrow distribution. Next year, we'll improve the question by asking, okay, 26 to 30, 30 to 35, etc. But phrased as we
funny.
did,
You kind of pretty clearly anticipated low numbers there.
We were, I guess we were optimists. We were either delusional or we were optimistic, but we had no belief. So that's why I have to sort of just fall on the sword publicly and say we blew it. So this number is probably worse. That's why I publicly shame myself. So, but this is saying roughly 1 out of 4, a quarter of the servers are going to experience an unplanned downtime, even if that's just a reboot. And no, because of our little snafu here, that big bar, and the way we phrase the question responses, it's probably higher. So now you put all this together. Here's where we go into full algebra mode on slide 34. So, okay, roughly 1 out of 4 servers, probably higher, are going to experience an outage. But when we look at that math below at success for backups and success for restores, that comes out to only 42% of the time are you going to be able to recover with no issue. And so, even if you're a gambling person, you typically don't gamble from your engineering day job. This is a very concerning statistic against the backdrop of wait, our odds are better gambling or doing a coin flip. In fact, our odds are slightly worse. And we've got a backdrop of probably greater than a quarter of the servers are going to go down.
Yeah, crazy. What is the, I mean, where do you think is the gap? Like, is there other data here that says, what's the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, a little bit on this next slide, 35, I believe. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not. Oh, maybe it's 33. So sorry. I'm asking to jump all
There it is.
over. Yeah, so short answer is there's not a silver bullet. That's not the best answer, or the answer we want to hear. This asks over the last couple of years, have you ever experienced this, and which, if you had experienced it, was the most impactful of the last 2 years? So that's why there's multiple bars. You can scan through the legend on the left, but Dirk, what this is basically saying is there are a lot of things that still go wrong in the data center.
Yeah.
From infrastructure failures, obviously we hear about mean time to failures improving, reliability, et cetera, but I'll just net it out in the interest of time to say a lot of bad things happen, and that's before we get to external cyber threats or internal
Yeah.
bad actors, anything related to that. It just means there's earthquakes, there's floods, there's power outages, networking configuration, cyber, there's everything. And that's why.
Yeah. I mean, I think about the Garmin thing that happened last year. I think maybe that was even during the pandemic. They got the ransomware attack. We just saw in the news that university out in, was it New Zealand or Australia? And the IT team was doing something with some profile movement, and they deleted everything. I mean, like all the profiles. So, PhD and master students research, like everything was gone. So it is. I mean, and we hear that too from clients. I mean, it's any number of reasons. It's lots of different things. It's really how do we protect against everything together? So we're getting real close here. So a few minutes, and I don't want to run over our time. So first I want to shout out to Mike Graham. So love for answering the questions. Yes, I'm sorry. You asked a very complicated question. I'm guessing that's why it hasn't gotten answered yet. But if you're answering some questions, Mike, appreciate that a lot. And for everybody who is, just really appreciate that. So anything, Dave, there's some more stuff that we can kind of close with, but I want to give us a couple minutes to spin the prize wheel. Maybe we'll give it one extra spin for everybody who stuck through this thing to the end. So appreciate you doing that and giving this time. But closing remarks, Dave, from you on the research, and maybe any key takeaways that you think are valuable for people while we get ready to spin the wheel again.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll just post it. I did at the beginning, but I just did right now in chat. Here's a link you can download the full report at. There are some regional variations, but just encourage you to go check out the information, get educated, and just thank Dirk and Virtual Systems for having us.
Yeah, I really appreciate you being on here. This is really cool, novel research, and love the opportunity to have the discussion with you. And if there's a takeaway I can give anybody, it is kind of one that we kind of talked about, and that is use that network of people around you. I hope this event kind of helps you do that. But if you've got a network of problem solvers around you, even other business buddies who you've gone out to beers with way back before the pandemic, keep leveraging those people. Keep asking good questions out in the community, and stay on some of this problem solving stuff, because that's, I think, our biggest challenge in IT is we get buried and we don't take the time to solve some of this stuff together. So Kristen, we'll spin a wheel again.
All right, let's do it.
Dennis eliminating tape by 2012. That was a good plan. Lots of people still using tape, though. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
Lots of people. Gilbert. I've seen your name come up a few times. Congratulations. That's a $250 gift card, Gilbert.
All right.
In one place?
Let's do it again.
Not in one place. All right. Jim Leafield, thanks for coming. $250 for you too. And a $500 gift card if it lands on any of the first two people who it just landed on. You don't get a second prize, but Jen, congratulations, $500. Let's do one more at 500 bucks.
Love it. Let's do it.
Last one. You weren't supposed to get a prize, but you're going to get one anyway. Kyle, you were one of the
Kyle.
first people on this webinar. Congratulations, man. Thanks for sticking it out on here. Glad you won something. Thank you again to everybody who came, and thanks again to Dave for being here with us. You'll see this deck and this presentation and the Q&A in the follow-up campaign, and hope we get to continue some of this dialogue with you, but appreciate everybody being here.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.